Hello and welcome to the Rebirth of the Nemesis. So if this is the first of this mini series of videos that you're watching on this particular 700R4, let me quickly get you up to speed. So the Nemesis is what this reman company that originally built this transmission dubbed it and advertised it to handle 500 plus horsepower. So my customer purchased this transmission approximately 10,000 miles ago or so, installed it into his 88 Chevy pickup, in behind his small block Chevy 383 that makes about 450 horsepower, and unfortunately it failed on him at just over 10,000 miles. Now, if you watch the teardown inspection video as well as the recap video, you probably recall me mentioning that it lasted 17,000 miles. However, my customer checked his records again, and we had spoken since the production and publication of those two videos, and he revealed that it actually only lasted 10,000 miles. So he had rebuilt the engine. It was originally just a Chevy 350, and he had, bored and stroked it out to 383 cubic inches and installed a cam, and it's making about 450 or so horsepower. So on its face, this transmission should have been perfectly fine to handle that based on the way it was advertised. However, when we opened it up, we saw that pretty much nothing was done to it from a parts perspective or procedures performed that would even enable it to remotely handle anything close to that amount of power. In fact, it really wasn't equipped to handle anything. It wasn't really rebuilt. It was slapped back together. What they did, at least this is my guess, is that they simply cleaned up the core and reused as many parts from it as humanly possible. Okay, they did install a 1/2-inch boost valve. They did install a new heat-treated sun shell, just a standard heat-treated one that the aftermarket has available. Nothing, overly fancy, or certainly nothing that I would use in a 500 plus horsepower build. Okay, they sold them a D-pan, but they failed to put a filter pickup extension tube in there, so the filter was falling out. I mean, the list goes on. If you're curious and you want to see the full, kind of play-by-play teardown of this video or of this transmission, go ahead and check out the video. Suffice to say, we're going to build it up properly to handle the 450 to 500 horsepower that it's going to see in my customer's application. It's basically a street truck cruising around, having fun. It's not equipped with drag slicks. It's not going to see the track or anything like that. But basically, we're going to throw every single part that we can think of imaginable at this thing, other than the Sonic Smart Tech drum or Cope Racing 4L79E drum. I like to use one of those when power levels exceed 500 to 550 horse, somewhere in there, depending upon application and usage pattern. So anyway, let's go ahead and get a little bit closer to the bench. We'll walk through all the parts that we're going to be installing. I'll discuss some of the considerations, build procedures that you want to perform, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the rest of the build-up. Okay, first things first, you want to make sure you care for the heart of the transmission, which is the pump. So if you have a bad heart, then obviously the rest of the body is not going to live very long. So same holds true transmissions. If the pump is not in serviceable, good working order, and all aspects of pump condition are not cared for during the assembly process, the transmission is simply not going to survive. So starting off, we're going to be putting in a new rotor and slide along the new rotor guide, and we're going to augment all that with a Transgo unbreakable pump ring kit. So this is the part number 700 PKH, and this is intended for vehicles that are going to be revving beyond 5,000 RPM on a regular basis. Okay, for the body itself, you want to make sure that you're working with a freshly machined surface. This is done on a vertical mill, and basically the pocket is recut and surfaced as well as the deck surface, so that you have your 1 to 2 thousandths clearance between the deck surface here and the top of the slide, and 1 to 1.5 thousandths clearance between the deck surface and the top of the rotor. Okay, for anything performance, that's what you want to manage to as far as your clearances. Okay, we installed a Sonic's Teflon pump body bushing here, and we also wallowed out the drain back to 5/16. Again, all things that you want to make sure you do on anything high performance for 700R4s and 4L60Es. All right, from a hydraulics perspective, we're going to be installing the following. We have a Sonic's O-ring boost valve. Here's the part number 77917-500. It's a 1/2-inch boost valve. and it comes with the O-rings. I prefer these over the non-O-ring variety because they just simply provide a little bit of extra sealing integrity there in the bore. We're also going to be installing a Sonic's oversized pressure regulator valve. Okay, part number is S74507P-1, and this will ensure that the pressure regulation is as optimal as can be. Okay, actually I think this is the part number 77917-06. Okay, this requires a reamer. You have to ream out the pressure regulator valve bore here in the stator support. So here we have the stator support. I have all of the original valving installed because we have to take this over to the vac test station and vacuum test it to get a baseline for where we were at. Now, admittedly, I already done this, and this valve is only holding between 10 and 11 inches of vacuum. So they let it go out the door like that. That's a big no-no for anything really, whether it be a stock grocery getter to, you know, top fuel dragster. I mean, you want to make sure that, you want to make sure there's no hairs in the way, but you want to make sure that this bore is sealing as it should be. Okay, you have a freshly machined surface here. And we're also going to be installing, in place of the factory TCC apply valve, the Sonic's TCC apply valve. So that's going to be this right here. And the part number is 77805K. Okay, this is going to be for your non-PWM 700R4s and 4L60Es. And you notice it comes with a little scarf cut Teflon sealing ring to seal the bore to the tune of 100% basically. Alright, that is the pump. We have to actually remove the stator from the stator support so that we can put it into the fixture and remount that bore once we do our initial testing, and then evacuate the stator, you know, get all the valves out of it. Alright, bushings for the pump stator. We're going to be installing a Sonic's Teflon rear bushing 77002BT-01. Unfortunately, it's made in China. It is what it is. That said, these are excellent bushings. So anything high performance, that's what I recommend you install in that rear stator position. And then, of course, an updated front stator bushing. All right, we're also going to install a new vent tube. Part number is 8633408. Hey, they reused the original vent tube that came in that transmission from the factory. And it's, you know, pretty incredible as far as what they did, and I don't mean that in a good way. All right, governor. So for all 700R4 governors, it is strongly recommended that you replace your governor gear and you fully service the governor. Now, he had set this thing up so that the transmission was shifting right around 5,000 RPMs or so, wide open throttle. So I'm not actually going to change anything about the way the governor is calibrated. I'm just simply going to install the gear and make sure the governor is functional. Okay, you want to install a new case connector as well as a new wiring harness. So this is the updated harness from Rostra. Find a part number. Part number is going to be 74425L. Okay, I don't like to reuse, you know, the 35, 40-year-old harness that comes in with these transmissions. I mean, yes, I guess you can if it's in good shape, but, you know, it's best to install a new one. Okay, here's our filter pickup extension tube for the deep pan, so we can install the deep pan back onto the transmission. That was an add-on. That was an extra. You know, the company that he purchased this from did not include that as a standard, you know, part of the base price, if you will, for the Nemesis. All right, I've installed bushings in pretty much all the parts that take bushings except for the stator. I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet. As you can see over there, we have the overhaul kit. That's your paper and rubber, seals, gaskets, sealing rings, O-rings, and things of that nature. We have a new filter, and then all of our bolts and small parts here on this side of the bench. So let's go ahead and move the camera down. We'll get into the rest of the barrel of the case as far as parts we're going to be installing, and then we'll finish up on the other bench where we have the valve body and the shift kit and all the other things that are going to be serviced or modified as per what comes in the shift kit. Okay, so for all my builds that are going to see performance or going to be used in a performance or very heavy duty application, I run a steel module. Now, this is a 4L65E spec steel module. So you notice the lindered steels here for the 3/4 clutch pack. There are 6 of these and 7 frictions that go into that clutch. And that's how we're going to set this up. Ideally, you want to be at no more than about 40 thousandths total clearance in the 3/4 clutch pack for anything performance. All right. Now, part of the Transgo kit comes with high rate return springs, as well as a modified, updated bleeder orifice for the 3/4 pack to reduce drag and prevent centrifugal apply. So we're going to be installing those parts into the drum as well. You'll notice we have bonded pistons. This is a 97 and up 4L60E bonded piston set. These are the Hyper Blue pistons from CO Aftermarket. I've been using these for a while. They're good to go. And then when you want to install these pistons, you need to also install the 97 and up dual retainer return spring assembly. So that's 24206-085. All right, we're also going to be augmenting and reinforcing the drum with the Sonex drum reinforcement kit. This is 77733-51K. This comes with a machined overrun piston, as well as a reinforcement sleeve. We'll show you how to install that. But basically, you press this on, to the drum, and that will reinforce this area right in here. So that's where it goes. Okay, this is a reman drum. So I have not actually assembled anything into this thing yet, so we're going to pressure test it to make sure it doesn't leak. If it does, then we're going to have to take everything back out of it and send it back to the supplier and exchange it for one that doesn't leak. All right, let's go ahead and move a little bit further down, and we'll talk about the frictions and some of the other things that we're going to be installing as well into the rest of the barrel of the case. All right, first thing I'll call your attention to is this Viton rubber seal. Okay, this goes right here on the inside of the drum. This is going to be your input-output shaft junction lube seal. All the kits for the 700R4 come with a plastic white seal. Do not use that seal ever. Okay, I don't care what kind of build profile or application usage pattern. Do not use that seal. Just take it out of the kit and throw it in the trash. Use a 4L60E Viton seal. All right, we have a new sprag gear assembly along with a new sprag element, Borg Warner 29 element sprag. This is what you want to use. All 700R4s, 4L60Es will take that sprag, except for the very early units, the very early 700R4s, I want to say January through either April or May of 1982, took a 7-element roller clutch style one-way assembly there in the forward drum. I have one. It's in the drawer. I would never ever use it. Don't ever reuse those if you have one come in that has that assembly. They're notorious for failing. They were basically under-engineered, and GM quickly pivoted to the dog bone style sprag. I think the from I want to say May of '82 when the changeover occurred up to 1987, they used a 24-element forward sprag assembly. Don't use that either. Always retro this whenever you can. Here are our frictions. This is for the forward drum. These are Alto high energy frictions. These are great frictions. We're supplementing those with the Borg Warner high energy 4L65E frictions. Again, excellent frictions for a street driven application. Okay, you can also run Alto Reds or even Rebestos blue plates, but the Rebestos blue plates or even the Alto Reds, I don't know that I recommend for just purely street. If you're doing racing, then yes, absolutely put those in the 3/4 clutch. Okay, same with the reverse input. We're running Alto high energy as well as the low reverse clutch. All right, we're also going to be installing a new low roller clutch assembly. So again, brand new. We don't know what kind of history we're dealing with the old one. It's not a high failure rate item, and if this is a stock transmission and there was nothing remarkable about the unit on teardown, you could certainly reuse this. Like I said, I think I've seen maybe 10 of these bad in all my transmissions I've done, 700R4s, 4L60Es. Okay, we're going to run the 4L65E apply and backing plate set. If you're going to run the 4L65E spec clutch in the 3/4 pack, you have to run the backing plate set that goes with it. So here are the part numbers. Okay, this is going to be the apply plate or the pressure plate. You'll notice it has the legs, and then this is going to be the backing plate. It has no legs. All right, reaction shaft. So this is going to be the Sonex billet steel heavy duty reaction shaft. Anything about 450 to 500 on up, it's recommended that you install these. 74602-01K is the part number. So it's got hardened heat treated splines, and the shaft itself is a billet steel material. All right, planets. We got two 4-pinion standard 700R4 4L60E planets. A lot of guys will run or want to run the 5-pinion planet setup. That's fine if you're working with a 4L65E core, though I don't know that they're worth the money individually. The OEM ones, though, if you're going to run the 5-pinion planet set, you absolutely want to run the OEM General Motors planetary carriers. You do not want to run aftermarket planetary assemblies. So here's the aftermarket 5-pinion planet that they installed in this transmission in the rear position. This is the rear planet. You notice the part number here is kind of laser engraved onto the body here at the base. All right, that's how you can tell that this is an aftermarket planet and not a GM one. In the recap or deep dive video on this transmission, I compared it to a factory front planet, and the front planet was a genuine GM planet. It does not have that aftermarket laser engraving of the part number anywhere on the body. Okay, those aftermarket planets are not very well made by and large. They have a reputation for failure. I had one fail on me years ago, and since then I refuse to use them. Planets are not really a concern in this transmission. They're not a source of high rate of failure if lubrication circulation is what it should be. Okay, back there you see the Sonex Smart Shell. That's the best sun shell in the market. For anything performance oriented, that's what you want to use. And the shell comes with its own inner roller clutch race, as well as a bearing. So between the reaction shaft and the sun shell, you rollerize the entire middle of the case. You remove the plastic thrust washer and the bronze thrust washer, and you replace those two thrust surfaces with Torrington bearings. And anytime you do that, you more effectively manage heat and ultimately transfer a little bit more horsepower to the drive shaft. All right, so the Sonex reaction shaft will come with two bearings. Okay, this is going to be for the reaction shaft itself. This is going to be for your planet. And then here you have a shim or a spacer. This is to take up the slop that exists between the snap ring on the output shaft and the front planetary carrier. If there's a lot of play, then you do kind of expose the snap ring there to a risk of breaking and snapping in half, so to speak, under high RPMs. So when we go back with this, we will look to shim that area if it's not, if the spacing is excessive, if it's not already nice and tight. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but Sonex includes that shim so that you can be prepared to make adjustments if you need to. Okay, Sonex wide rear sun gear bushing. And then for the sun gears themselves, it's always a good idea to cut additional channels here, just like this. You relieve the bottom of the sun gears. They're the planet facing portion of the sun gears for additional lubrication flow to those planetaries. All right. Just looking at the bench, I want to make sure that I covered everything I wanted to cover for the main case. I think I did. No, maybe I didn't. I lied. So, wide 2/4 band. The factory installed, I'm sorry, not the factory, the company that built this transmission initially installed a Kevlar band, but that band looked like it was used. It did not look new to me. And then here at the rear position for this bushing in the reverse input drum, you can install a Teflon pump body bushing. So we installed a Sonics bushing here. Okay, it's exactly the same diameter as the pump body itself as far as the bushing location, so you can run a Teflon bushing there. All right, let's go over to the other bench and we'll walk through the brains of the transmission, the valve body, and talk you through what we're going to do there. Okay, I think I got you right where I want you as far as viewing angles. So as you can see, we have the fully assembled valve body except for the TV valve and sleeve and plunger lineup. I haven't touched the valve body beyond taking out the main TV valve train. So we're going to film the entire installation of the Transgo reprogramming kit that you see here on the bench. So this is going to be the Transgo 2 and 3 kit. This is a great all-around kit for anything performance-oriented for 700R4s. It's somewhat analogous to the Transgo HD2 kit for the 4L60E, except this will allow you to convert your 700R to full manual control. So we're not going to be exercising those options. It's going to be just set up for a normal forward automatic shift pattern, but suffice to say, this kit contains quite a lot of parts, and you'll see that when we film the installation. All right, we're going to augment this kit with a few other things. So here we have the Transgo high performance 3/4 upshift valve. So this is the part number. It's 7-4-V, and what this allows for is wide open throttle upshifts from 3rd to 4th gear. So it's something the customer kind of wanted, and something that we're going to do. And you can accomplish the same thing if you don't want to purchase this valve. You can accomplish that as well by either modifying the TV plunger and sleeve or purchasing the Sonics equivalent sleeve and plunger kit that allows for wide open 3/4 throttle upshifts. Alright, we're also going to install a Transgo 700P plate. Nothing really wrong with the factory plate per se. I mean, this is the factory plate. I kind of covered this in some detail, but here is how all of the holes were drilled, their respective sizes and locations or functions. And like I said, nothing really wrong with it. I'm just going to take it and trade, maybe use it on another build. Preferably with a higher stall converter. The converter that you see here on the bench is going to be a 2500 stall, so we're going to set this up to shift as it should. Nice, crisp, quick shifts, especially a wide open throttle for a stall speed and vehicle of this particular profile for the customer. Alright, one of the things I'm a big fan of doing for anything real high performance in these transmissions when power levels get around that 450 and up range is install billet servo assemblies. So you have a couple of different options available to you on the market, at least the two that I'm very familiar with. They're the Sonics Super Hold servos for 2nd and 4th gear, and the Superior Tech Super Hold servos also for 2nd and 4th gear. As far as ratio size, when it comes to the overall apply surface area, and that's really what we're talking about when we say ratio, the Superior Tech servos are the largest that I'm aware of on the market. The Sonic Super Hold servos are only slightly smaller. Both are significantly larger for both 2nd and 4th gear than the factory equivalent 093 Corvette 2nd gear servo and the standard 4th gear servo that comes in all these transmissions. So the servos come with a complete seal and sealing ring kit. There's also an apply pin. This apply pin is purposefully too long. If you try to install it as is, you'll never be able to get the snap ring back into the case, and that's because it's intended for you to grind it down incrementally until you get your band clearance perfect. So 1/8 to 3/16 of longitudinal travel on the drum is where you want to end up. Okay, don't worry about how far the servo itself travels inboard. I mean, you can measure that if you want, but that should not be the controlling metric. The controlling metric here is the band travel along that drum. Okay, that's band clearance. So servo travel is kind of an indicator of band clearance. It's a corollary. It's not what you want to directly manage to. Alright, so speaking of sleeve and plunger kits, we have the throttle valve sleeve and plunger kit. This is going to be 77966-94K. This is going to be the factory spec version of their kits. 94NK is going to be the wide open 3/4 throttle upshift capable version. So if you don't install your Transgo 3/4 shift valve, and you want that capability, you'll want to install the other Sonic sleeve and plunger kit, or you can modify the factory sleeve and plunger if you don't want to spend the money. But one of the problems a lot of 700R4s have, and we're seeing it more and more as these transmissions get older, is they don't have adequate line rise. So in other words, when you do your line pressure test after you've initially set up and adjusted your TV cable to verify that you're either within spec or, you know, if you still have work to do, you'll notice that your line pressures at minimum TV, in other words at idle with no tension on the cable, are normal and within spec range. However, when you go to full TV, you know, where you step on it, you have poor line rise characteristics. So for example, in drive, these transmissions with an otherwise purely factory setup, as far as the hydraulics and everything else is concerned, you want to see somewhere between 50 and 65 PSI at a minimum TV in park, neutral, drive, and D3. In reverse, you'll probably see anywhere from 85 to about 110 PSI. And manual 2 and low, you'll see somewhere between 130 and 180 PSI. Alright, it's a broad range, but I mean, as long as you're somewhere in that range, then you're fine. But when you go to, you know, full TV to see what kind of line rise you're getting, you know, say in drive, for example, or neutral or park, you might only get another 20 or 30 PSI instead of doubling the line pressure. And the line pressure should approximately double. And so that is usually an indicator that this sleeve and plunger are worn out. Sometimes it's bad PR valve, like we have a weak PR valve here, and so that has to be corrected as well, but a lot of times it's that sleeve and plunger. So it's a good idea, just you know, as an extra added bit of assurance to, you know, I guess mitigate the risk that you'll burn the transmission up when you start romping on it. I would purchase one of these Sonic sleeve and plunger kits for all 700R4s that you build. So, I mean, that's just my advice, and that's what I've been doing. You know, you can do what you want, obviously, but that's how I'd go about it. All right, 2 new accumulator pistons for the forward accumulator, 1/2 accumulator. We'll use the Transgo springs that come in the kit and calibrate it based on their instructions. All right, there's other things you could do to the valve bodies and, you know, the accumulators and other things like that to, you know, modify these things to kind of get them to do what you might want them to do in a more performance-oriented application. If you're curious and you want to know more about that, check out my 700R4 high-performance valve body modifications video. And there's actually a 2 video series. The first video covers the valve body itself, and then the second part covers things like the accumulators, shift calibration with the spacer plate, and other mods that you can do. All right. I think I covered everything I want to cover here. Let's go to the case. We'll talk about a couple of things that you'll want to keep in mind, you know, with respect to the case itself, and then we'll wrap up this portion of the video. Not a whole lot really to discuss with respect to the case itself. Obviously, do not forget to put your little vent tube in there before you install the pump. In fact, that's the first thing I'm going to do, even before I do anything else. I'm going to install that vent tube because one time I did forget and I had to pull the pump out. You want to check all your bolt holes, make sure that the threads are in good shape. Check this area in here too. If you watched my relatively recent 4L60E no 4th gear stump video, we had kind of a, I guess, unconventional failure here where the band anchor pin location on the band itself completely failed, and that caused the band to walk in the case. It tore up the band anchor pin bore here pretty badly and started to machine a deep groove into the case, and at the same time it wallowed out, or, you know, spread out the legs of both the sun shell as well as the lugs on the reverse input drum, which, you know, it was those lugs that were machining a groove into the inner diameter of the case bore there. So, yeah, that case had to go to the scrap yard. All right, for anything high performance, it's strongly recommended you simply block off the fourth accumulator circuit, and you can do that with either a check ball or a 1/4" set screw. I use a set screw. They used a check ball. I mean, it's fine. What I like about the set screw is that it's reversible. You can just take the set screw out if you want to restore functionality to your fourth accumulator for whatever reason. For anything performance, it's like I said, you really don't want to run a fourth accumulator. That 3/4 upshift, especially if you're doing wide open throttles, it'll get really lazy and it will stress the band. So it's strongly recommended you block it off, and that's like one of the few things that this company did that built this transmission that was done correctly. All right, check your servo bore as well. Make sure that this groove here isn't dirty with grit or grime or whatever. Make sure that the bore itself's nice and smooth. You also want to check your third accumulator check ball capsule for leaks. I have another video on that will walk you through that process. It's called 3/4 comeback 4L60E mystery solved. That was another really left field failure of a speed sensor. But if you're interested in that, I walk you through how to test that capsule, which is located right here. This capsule leaks, you'll burn up your band in your 3/4 clutch pack. It's very rare I see them leak, but it's worth checking. I'm going to do that with this one as well. All right, the rest of the case, check your, check your low reverse piston sealing surfaces, deep inside the case. Check the threads for your pump to case bolts. Check the pump bore. Any kind of sealing surface that would otherwise be compromised, like scored up, scratched, in such a way that would potentially cut or lacerate a seal or a sealing ring or something like that. You want to make sure you check. And if it's minor, you can touch it up with some really fine sandpaper. Start out with maybe like 800 grit and then progress upwards to 3000 grit. And I would wet sand it. I wouldn't dry sand it. I would wet sand it, maybe with some transmission fluid, and see if that clears it up, so that when you run your finger along it, you don't cut your glove if you're wearing a nitrile glove, or you can't feel the the groove anymore. Real severe issues, like if this was really scored up bad, you'd have to scrap the case. There may be a repair sleeve for this. I don't know. Actually, I think there is. I don't know what it is offhand. I thought I remember seeing something. So if you have a worn bore here, to be honest, your best bet, even if it's a factory application, is to simply block the accumulator. And when you do that, do not put anything in this bore. Okay, when you block the fourth accumulator, do not put a piston or a spring or the pin in here. Leave it completely empty, because that will allow for a much more efficient flow of lube to the rear gear train, because there's a lube circuit that flows through here as well. Okay, that's one of the reasons why Transgo and other shift kit makers have you install the piston upside down over top the spring. 4L60Es, from the factory, the piston went in here and then the spring on top of it, or I guess on top of it or in front of it. So another thing to keep in mind, check your governor tubes or feeds as well. Make sure that they're not clogged up, and then check your governor bore. This one appeared to have superficial scratches, but I air checked it with a special tool and there was no issues with the bore. Okay, if you do have problems with the governor bore, you'll have odd drivability symptoms, and you won't be able to trace them to anything until you air check that bore with the tool. If you do, then there's a reamer and repair bushing that you can use to remount that bore and install the bushing, and that will salvage the case for you. Alright, I think that about does it for the overview of this build. As you can see, we are throwing pretty much everything in the kitchen sink except for the fully upgraded drum. The Sonic Smart Tech drums are over $1,000. They are the best drums on the market that I'm aware of for these, and up there with them is the Cope Racing 4L79E drum. Either one is fine. And I will use those when applications and engine power exceeds 500 to 550, depending on what the customer is doing with the vehicle. If it's an all-out race machine, I may install those drums starting at around 350 to 400 horsepower, because they're just going to see so much in the way of RPM and all the corresponding stresses that come with that type of demanding application. Alright guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. If there's any questions, anything I didn't cover, or anything that you want to add to the discussion or point out, any suggestions you have for, you know, approaches, build strategy, parts, etc. for these transmissions, feel free to post them in the comments section. This way, you know, everybody has a good, you know, a good list of things to go on. So until the next one, we'll chat soon. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening. And again, thank you so much for watching.